So today's episode is a fun one. Today's episode is actually with my high school wrestling coach. The first guy that I ever really knew that was into health and wellness, someone who coached me through probably the best year of athletic performance I've ever had, and a guy who I frankly just always enjoyed jamming with on a variety of topics. He's lived in Hong Kong, practices jiu-jitsu, and a few years ago started his study in mental performance. Today's episode is with Scott Shaw.
This is the United States. Like, man, you don't talk about what people are eating.
Well, Tucker Carlson just had the dude on talking about Ozempic, and did you see this? This was kind of crazy.
That's the insulin stuff?
Yeah, the stuff that people are taking for like weight loss now. 2 or 3 days ago, he had this dude on who was talking about basically like how Ozempic is being positioned as this like kind of cure-all for weight loss, but it really has some intense side effects. And we're just looking at this as like kind of a Band-Aid on the greater problem of like obesity and all these things. But he was talking about food stamps and how much soda is bought because of food stamps.
Yeah. Or they sell them to get like beer and stuff.
Where like the government's subsidizing acquiring like light beer and liquid, poison here. It's wild.
Yeah, what was the vermectin? Was that it?
Ivermectin.
Ivermectin.
Yeah.
Remember when like Joe Rogan said it's like,
oh yeah, him and Aaron Rodgers. There were a few guys out there that were doing that.
And it's like, really? And the funny thing is like, people in the United States had a choice with like the whole vaccine wearing masks, things of that nature. Like in Hong Kong, you had no choice. Even like mainland China, they didn't wear a mask all the time.
Oh yeah.
They were free to travel around all mainland. Like Hong Kong, we were locked down. You had to wear a mask. You're in the gym with a mask on. Like,
no way.
Yeah. So and then you had to actually get the vaccine. So I think I got 3 jabs because if you wanted to go out anywhere,
you had to.
Yeah, because we had a vaccine passport.
Yeah.
If you wanted to actually come back to the States, to get on the plane, you had to have it. So,
wow.
But yeah, there's
you were there before. When did you move to Hong Kong?
2019. So
you basically moved into when it was all. I guess it hadn't started yet, but it started.
Yeah, but political protests, pro-government and pro-democracy kind of kicked off.
Yeah,
which is fine as long as you were a Guaylo or a Westerner. So Guaylo is like derogatory term for like white ghost, which like everyone embraces that. Yeah. If you're a Guaylo or if you're Westerner, it's like a you're like, oh yeah, I'm Guaylo. Like but yeah, so yes, political protest is what started there, and then that started to die down. And then, bam, COVID, which was like, man, like COVID was cool at first, like, because, Westerners, like, aren't as cautious. And especially Hong Kong had SARS. Mm-hmm. So everyone that lived through SARS were like, panic and like the whole.
So they felt it was going to be really serious because they had already kind of seen this go down before and were more scared.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then also it's like, there's like certain things that Eastern culture thinks a little more magical.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, for sure.
Like the horn on a taxi cab, like traffic's backed up. It's like, Yeah. And it's like, nothing's going to change. So like you always hear that. Or like masks. So like being in Hong Kong, that pollution gets blown down from mainland China. Mm-hmm. And then you can't even see across the harbor, but people will wear they'll put masks like just like the surgical mask, like ask you like, you want one? I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm
good. Well, that's always, even when I was studying abroad in China, masks were a big part of the culture anyways. And I'm not sure exactly what the reason was. In some cases, it almost felt like a fashion statement as much as
it's that also.
So like
So
designer type of things, super done up. It's like, okay. I mean, maybe it's just a fashion element as much as it is a protection thing. But
yeah, so that's the other thing too. So actually living there and understanding everything behind mask, even before like COVID, like the designer aspect of it.
Yeah,
People wear it. Yeah, people will wear it as a fashion piece.
Exactly.
Type situation. So like people in the States were like, oh yeah, people over there, like they respect each other. That's why they're wearing masks. Like, no, it's not. Like,
it's a little different. Wait, so how intense did it get when you were there? Like, did it ever get to the point where you couldn't leave? Because I feel like you see videos of them being like, there's like curfews in effect, like, and I don't know how much of that stuff was legit.
So,
or like they were spraying. Remember, there was like the videos of them spraying spraying the guns with the white. Did you ever see those? I think it was from China, but this might have been China, not Hong Kong, though.
Yeah. So Hong Kong was as strict as any place.
Yeah.
So referencing Hong Kong, it was, you're going into, if you left, you could leave, but when you came back, you had to go into quarantine for 21 days, like actual quarantine, not like the U.S. where everyone's, oh, we're in quarantine, going to the beach. So you go in and
loose quarantine versus
the typical person's, can only afford a regular size hotel room, so like 200 square feet.
Yeah.
For 21 days.
Yeah.
So you're stuck in there for 21 days. You can't leave. All your food comes to the door.
Whoa.
If you were to like sneak out, you're getting locked up. So, and then what was it? If you tested positive while you were in quarantine, you could face up to, I can't remember if it's 6 or 9 months in an actual quarantine facility.
Oh God.
Where you can't leave. And like you could test over and over again for COVID and it not be active in your system where you can like people can contract it from you. But as long as you're testing positive for it, you got to remain in that COVID facility. It's called Penny Bay.
Yeah.
So it's like makeshift place. I think it was like,
they had like the modular units all built out.
Yeah. So it's like
yeah.
So yeah, they built it out. I think it's like near the airport. So it's kind of like,
I saw a video of that. Yeah, there was like some drone shots that came out that were crazy.
Yeah, so like if you flew into Hong Kong, there was, you have to immediately get tested.
Yeah,
you got put on a bus, and then immediately driven to your quarantine facility. Now I think at first you could actually get like your own rides, like taxi drivers. So they were hiring taxi drivers, and you see them in like hazmat suits, like, like driving people like around.
Monsters Inc. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was like, that was the biggest fear. It's like going to like this Penny Bay thing, because then it's like,
oh man.
But yeah, other than that,
lost in there, that would not be the vibe.
Yeah, so it's like you always had to wear a mask. Which that just became the norm.
Yeah.
Like at first it kind of sucked, and then it's like, okay, like this is whatever. You go inside a restaurant, and Hong Kong kind of started the whole, like putting up the dividers in between tables and separating.
Oh yeah, like the 6 foot, just spacing.
And then everyone else, like you started seeing places in the States start doing that as well.
Yeah.
Just because the whole SARS thing, they were a little, I guess, had to step up opposed to everybody else, had a better understanding as far as what needed to be done or the great risk of it. But it wasn't the vaccine passport at first. It was just mask.
Yeah, that seems a little sketchy.
And then they started putting.
Was it all digital? Was the passport all digital?
Oh yeah, like you had your
phone. You're like.
Yeah, so it's like you go in, QR code, it's like bam,
jab, like I'm here.
It changes. They're like, all right, you can come in.
Lights
and then as soon as you like go in, you take your mask off, you eat, it's like walk back out.
It's so much like that scene. Have you seen iRobot? Or not iRobot, I Am Legend?
I have, but I can't remember.
They're like scanning the people's like eyeballs with the machine, like green's go, red's bad, and red's just like.
But it really wasn't that bad. Living through that, I mean, you just get used to it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, at first it kind of, well, there's times, so there's like dips where there would be times where there's like greater restrictions put in place. So there's essentially like a curfew where all restaurants and would have to like close down at a like certain time. And the ongoing joke was like, yeah, like we're fine, don't have to worry about the COVID monster during the daytime, but after 7 p.m. that's when you gotta worry about COVID. So as long as you're in your house,
monsters come out at night.
Yeah, and it's like there's like various loopholes. So if you were a bar and you didn't have food, then those places got shut down for like months and months and months.
Damn.
So some places would just start doing like little BS things like cheese and crackers.
And charcuterie board.
Yeah.
It's like saltines in it.
So that they could stay open. And then it's like, COVID first hit, that's when everything pretty much like got shut down for the most part. And then, the big thing is having to adapt. And I can't remember. I met the guy. He's his family is from mainland China. He grew up in Houston, moved back to Shanghai, opened up a bar there. It's like one of the top bars in Asia. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but he essentially was like the first person to say, all right, bars are closed. We still need to make money. What can we do? So, he did the whole like making cocktails to go type situation.
Oh yeah. So many places started doing like the to go boxes or grab and go meals.
So like where they go in and like you get like the jar, you get all the like the elements to go along with it. Yeah, and the instructions to go for it. So he was like the originator, and then other places started like kind of picking up on that as well. So that was a lot of what like a bar scene there had to do.
Figure it out, yeah.
So essentially, like you're buying these cocktails that you're making at home from like some of the best bars in the world. And it's like, and some of even the restaurants, because there's so many like Michelin star restaurants there.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
They were doing that a lot as well, where it's like, they prep everything.
Ooh.
And then like it's either delivered to you or you pick it up. And then like they have the instructions or a video. Yeah. And you're just following along. So you're like making these Michelin star like meals at home. So, it wasn't like bad. Like,
what was your like accommodations like living over there?
So 700 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and a domestic helper's quarter, which is like a maid there.
Oh.
So that's like
who lived with you?
I mean, we didn't have one, but a lot of people do have domestic helpers. They're typically from Indonesia or the Philippines.
Even in a 700 square foot apartment, you would have someone
even smaller than that, and like their room would be maybe the size of this table, and that'd be big.
Yeah, it's literally just like a bed.
Yeah, and then ours had a wet bath, so it's a shower toilet combo.
Right. Yeah.
No AC, and that's like a nice place for like them. And some people have these domestic helpers, and they have to sleep on the kitchen floor.
No way.
Yeah, or even like smaller, but they never have a AC unit or anything like that. And it's like it gets hot and humid in Hong Kong.
I can imagine.
But the thing that sucked for them is they have to work 6 days a week, and essentially it's like a form of modern day slavery.
I was gonna say this sounds a lot like a modern slavery setup.
So they get paid, I think it's like $600 a month, like US, which isn't much.
No, not at all.
And a lot of that's going back to their home country because they have families like kids and things of that nature there.
So this would be like mom moves to Hong Kong to get a job as a domestic helper to send money back to her family.
Yeah, it's like the same way with people coming from say Mexico over here and like working and sending money back as well. But and there a lot of those people that don't have their green card are probably getting screwed on how much they're getting paid here as well, as far as that goes. But
would that be like undocumented type of immigration in Hong Kong?
No, so there's like companies that solely bring them in. They have housing for them. Whoa. In case. So essentially they like recruit them. You come here. They provide like housing, like a room with like bunk beds. Yeah. And then it's kind of dependent on if a lot of them will live with who they are employed by, because they do all the cooking, they do all the cleaning, they're responsible for the child.
Whoa.
And so
live-in nanny vibe, like.
Yeah, so 6 days a week they work.
Yeah.
And typically they're off on Sundays. So like if you go out on Sundays, like that's not the day that you want to go out to the park or the promenade, which is like along the harbor, because that's their day off. Like they go out there and like put out tents. It's like,
yeah, everyone's out.
Yeah, and they're, that's like only social time that they get to have.
Dang.
So, but yeah, you'll see them start going out like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And like setting up and like,
yeah, trying to enjoy as much as they can. Dude, that just shows you how many different types of ways there are to live in this world. That is, I can't imagine.
Yeah, like that. 700 square feet in Hong Kong is huge.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's probably, I think, roughly around 40,000 HKD, which would be.
Oh yeah, how much US would that be a month?
Around a little under 6,000 US a month.
Whoa.
So Hong Kong is the most expensive
Dang, in
place.
Raleigh, you could have like the top spot for that.
Yeah, so it's and this was not even in the central, like the CBD like area or near like where everything is popping off.
There's even,
Yeah, so there's like this is like in a more upcoming area, but there's still like a lot of old like factories and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Now you move to like the central to get something as nice as what we were living in.
Yeah.
You're 10,000 US.
Dang.
And there's people that are paying like, so there's the peak that overlooks like, where you can see down Hong Kong Island.
Oh yeah.
And you can see across to the dark side. And you see the harbor, but on the peak, easily 100,000 US or rent people are paying for.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of really wealthy people in Hong Kong, and then a lot of very poor people.
Extremes.
So it's not uncommon for a family of 5 or 6 to live in a 300 square foot flat or apartment, and like people like sharing beds type situation.
You'd have to.
So, but here's the other thing too. When you live in a place like that where there's lots going on, you don't need something big.
You said that to me before, actually. Like you spent so much time out and about, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, like where we live, is just a place to store useless stuff. Like think about all the stuff you have.
It's like a storage unit.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially it. Like what do you really need a couple thousand square foot place to live? Like if you look at your closet, like how much stuff do you actually wear?
Yeah.
Or like you go through like how much stuff do you actually use here?
Oh, you're 100% right about that. Yeah.
And it's like, man, we got so much stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like
if I didn't see this, or like, and you remembering stuff you haven't seen for like 8 months, like, oh, I had this thing, and you're like, did I really need this thing in this closet? Like,
yeah. So it's like you really don't need that much.
Oh
so, So like if you lived in like New York City, like a couple hundred square feet is enough. Like,
oh yeah,
because you can just go out. I mean, that's the same way with Hong Kong. It's like you go out, you're gone all day until you come home, and like
you're just like sleeping, maybe having a meal. Like
like most people eat out. Like Hong Kong's that was like one of the issues that took place during the COVID, where everyone goes out and eats all their meals out.
Interesting.
Because even though there's like Michelin star restaurants, there's also like the more local places you can eat relatively cheap or inexpensive. So whenever they were shutting everything down, like at whatever, I think at one point it was 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
People are like, well, now we can't eat dinner. Like, cause like most places don't have a kitchen.
Yeah. Oh,
so it's like, so it's like real, or not a like big fridge. It's like,
like you can stock up for the week and like make all your meals at home.
Yeah. So that was an issue. That's kind of pushed back during some of those restrictions.
Fascinating.
So then they had like extended and things of that nature. And eventually they just had to go like, all right, well, we can't really like shut off food from everyone.
People just aren't going to eat now.
Yeah. So yeah, man, it's like, it wasn't that bad. I mean, everything's about perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Granted, we never got the building that we lived in locked down.
Okay.
Now were like so this is what would essentially take place. At first, if someone tested positive in your building,
yeah.
So Hong Kong.
Oh, this is how they would approach like a apartment complex.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So everything's like a high-rise skyscraper type situation.
Yeah.
So Hong Kong has like the most skyscrapers in the world.
Uh-huh.
Hong Kong, like if you look at it, as far as land area, it looks big, but 80% of it is uninhabited, like mountain jungle area. If you look at like Hong Kong Island, everything's super condensed.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's, what is it? There's like 500,000 more people like New York.
Can you put up a photo of Hong Kong? I want to see that.
So there's like 500,000 more people in New York, but Hong Kong is much more condensed.
That one on the left is fascinating. Look at all those.
Yeah, so that's looking down from the peak. So people that live up there is like
where'd it go?
The people that are like spending $100K in US.
That's wild.
But the cool thing with Hong Kong is like you're right there in the city, the action. You can go hike up to the peak. You can go hike anywhere. You can go to the beach within like a shorter amount of time.
That's like Cape Town, South Africa, where you got a great hike. They're like, well, they had wineries down there too, but you're right on the water. That's actually beautiful. Damn.
Except when the smog's there, but,
but
every night there's like 2 light shows.
How much Photoshop did they do on the?
Now there's some days it's like that, and sometimes, if like, however the wind is like blowing, then it can blow like the smog in. You can't even see across the harbor, and it's just like wild because it's so thick. Like even when you're walking around, it's like you see the haze, and it's like yeah, man, like Hong Kong. Is awesome, super awesome.
What was the vibe with the apartment complex thing you were talking about? Like, if
yeah. So essentially, early on, if one person tested positive for COVID, bam, they would like lock down testing.
Oh snap! Everyone in the building gets tested.
Yeah. So, and it'd be like sometimes towers, because a lot of times you have like these building, like a complex, and they have different towers.
Yeah.
So it might just be the tower that gets like locked down, but everyone has to go test. So they like knock at your door, like if you don't answer, then you could like possibly like be arrested or whatnot.
Damn.
Type situation.
How do they communicate with you? Is it like you're getting emails and they're like, yo, we're
I mean, like, well, it never happened to us, so it's like,
I guess you
like, I mean, that's like the paranoid thing.
I know,
because like,
is someone gonna knock on my door one day and then we're like locked down? And
it's more concerned about the dog. Like, what's gonna happen to the dog?
Priorities here.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the only real fear. Like, I never really cared if I got COVID or tested positive for COVID or went to Penny Bay, the quarantine facility. Is like, what's gonna happen to my dog? Like, my dog is my number one.
Yeah.
So that was like the only real concern as far as that goes. But yeah, they lock it down, and they run testing from. So if they start at 9, it might go to like 4 or 5 a.m. where they're like bringing everybody out, people out there in hazmat suits, like blocking off, like, you're just walking by like, oh man, like hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So that was consistent. And at first, like I said, it was like if one person tested, then they'd, do that.
Yeah.
Eventually it got to where it had to be like more than like 5 within a building or so forth.
Yeah.
So there'd be times where people were testing positive in our like complex, and they would put like notices in the lifts or the elevators to let you know. And it's like, all right, as long as we stay under the cutoff, we're good.
Sure,
So that's
see that bar going up. You're like, all right, can we go down?
And there's like, they would put out a like map where you could track and see like every place that someone had tested, had
like
been
infestation.
So like you're like zooming in, like, all right, I'm like, oh my gosh,
it's like a heat map. It's like, we got a lot of hits on this.
So it's like always just like the paranoia, like that, like, all right, like our area is cool, like you're like, we'll stay out of this other area. But yeah.
So how were they like communicating all that with you? Did you had like an app you had to download where you're getting all of like this information out of it?
I can't remember. Like, so we had like an app for
Because I'm always fast. Like when you go to a foreign country, like how do you get information from the government, or how do you get the information that everyone else
same
has?
thing. Like if there's something of important, it's like it's all linked to your like the cell phone like signal. They can always tap into it.
Because we were getting like push notifications, like how Apple does those things.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of
something like that, I guess.
Yeah. But I think at first they were a little more on top of it.
Yeah,
and then it kind of like kind of fizzled out, and it's like you had to essentially go and like look for yourself.
Yeah.
Or they'd notify, the building that you lived in, and then the building would just like post something up like
got it. Yeah.
In Tower 2, you had this many people like testing positive.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, like
stay over in Tower 1.
Yeah. So that was consistent. Everything was consistent in Hong Kong when it comes to that. Now, mainland China is different. So they didn't have to wear masks, nonstop. So, like, if COVID numbers were, like, nothing, like, they weren't required to wear masks because it's much more spread out. Whenever the numbers would start going up, then they go from 0 to 100 and lock down things. So, like, say, Shanghai, whenever they did the big lockdown there, like people couldn't leave.
Yeah.
If you had a dog, the dog couldn't go outside.
No, you got to find his corner.
Yeah. So, think about that. Like your dog learns behaviors. They learn to go outside. Like, when you first have them, like, you might have to give them a little spanking or discipline them if they use the restroom inside.
You're trying to describe to your dog that there's like a global pandemic and they have to take a deuce in the house.
Yeah. Like, I was trying to get my dog to like use the balcony just so that I think that
spray painted green, be like, this is your
I'm like, all right. And it's like, no, like I had to like go out because like in the building you had 2 elevators that you had to take to get outside, and then you had like walk, and then it was like, and there's not much green space in the actual city.
Oh, really?
So like the hardest part with having a dog in Hong Kong was she's used to grass. So that first time that she like peed on the sidewalk, I was like celebrating. I
got a Hong Kong dog, y'all.
Mainland China is
been a different vibe a little bit.
Yeah.
What was it like adjusting just to I mean, I know your experience was probably a little skewed just because of everything that was happening, but was the adjustment to living there pretty easy?
At first, so it kind of comes down to understanding differences in cultures.
Yeah.
Being kind of open-minded to that, and that's a big problem that I've seen, and I think most people won't even recognize it coming from the States, because let's be honest, people from the U.S. think they're right about everything. It should always be done this way. And I'm not gonna lie, like I kind of was like that at first, and then you kind of like, sidewalks are super narrow. People are like, super crowded, because the saying is, New York minutes equal to like a Hong Kong second, because Hong Kong is such a faster pace place.
Yeah.
So at first it's like, like this, like
fighting for yourself.
throwing like elbows, like people running into you, things of that nature. And then eventually, like, you're like, you just got to adapt and adjust to the cultural changes. And then it was kind of like, eventually you're just like, boom, like you don't even pay attention. You're just weaving in and out. You're going with the flow of things. So that's kind of the first kind of thing,
that like really stuck out. Like, oh, this is a different dynamic of interacting with strangers on a,
Yeah. So it's kind of that, but nothing was like too major because, at one point in time it was a British colony. So English was utilized a lot there. There's a good amount of Western culture within there, coming from South Africa, Australia, the UK.
I found that in a lot of my travels too. Like English is kind of just like a hack in a way, because you can almost go anywhere. And like,
well, I also think it's like people from other countries realize that people that predominantly speak English aren't going to take the effort to learn another language.
Probably so.
So they kind of have to
these
adapt.
bastards, we got to learn their language, I guess.
And then like if you go into like a local shop, and like I'll go like local shops to buy stuff, like they have a calculator.
Yeah, true.
They show you like how much you need to pay.
Yeah.
Boom, there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like Western places as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of depending on where you are. As you start getting further away from the city, and getting more like in the northern part or the New Territories, which is like the northern part of Hong Kong, it becomes more local and you know, type situation. But as long as you're like in the main part of Kowloon or Hong Kong Island, English is like pretty relevant.
Oh, yeah. In Shanghai, I loved like how good the public transportation was. It was a game changer compared to, I mean, really anywhere I'd been in the States.
Yeah, so Hong Kong has what they use is their metro system. It's MTR, and it's like one of the top in the world.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the nice thing too. Is like you don't need a car.
No,
like,
not at all. Yeah.
So like my ideal place living in the States would be if I lived someplace where like I didn't need to drive, like public transport, like one of these older like cities that like are well established. You know, like Chicago, New York City, you know, one of those that like has a good like rail system or public transportation system. Was then like, you know, like you can go out.
It's a nice lifestyle. Yeah.
Other thing is like Ubers in Hong Kong, they're all Teslas.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And they're all super cheap. So it's like 10 US, 10 to 15 US.
Dang, yeah.
And it's like,
at that point, you're just like, yeah, I'll get an Uber. Let's do it.
Yeah. So the inside joke, like coming back, is like, I see a Tesla. I'm like, oh, Uber driver. And like people here think they're flexing with a Tesla, and it's like, man, that's like what Uber drivers like in Hong Kong and a lot of places in the world, because like there's so much wealth there. Like you see like Maseratis and you know all these high end like cars, and like Teslas are like,
oh yeah,
like you're nothing, very basic type vehicle
for
there.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that the coolest thing was like living there. So you know, like you go there and everyone's like talking about like, oh yeah, we're all Hong Kongers. And it's like year one, I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, you know, like I'm American living here, or Mexican American living here. And I didn't really understand it. Year two, like you start to understand it. It's like, you know, people come to the US, you never identify as just an American if you come here. You know, it's always like, I'm a
that's right,
Mexican American, Chinese American.
For sure.
And then you start to get it, like, because Hong Kong is like such a unique place where it's like, oh, you are like, you start understanding what Hong Kong, and there's like, people reference Hong Kong as Home Kong. And so, you know, to really understand, or, you know, how much Hong Kong like changed me was, if I ever reference going home, I'm referencing Hong Kong, because that's the first place that really like feels like home.
No way.
Yeah, like I'd go out to the dog parks and everyone's like super cool, you know, like, there's a little bit of language barrier, but everyone, you know, like you get along, you start
more
getting
interaction than you get in the States.
And it's like leaving from the States and moving there, like nothing, like no one like, you know, said bye or da da da. Like leaving from Hong Kong.
Oh wow.
People are like taking pictures, like that worked in the building. That we lived in. Like crying, like tearing up.
Oh snap.
The dog park, like my dog was like well known in like Hong Kong, like walking down the street, everyone's like, Dixie. I'm like, who is this person? And it's like they were giving her gifts, and you know, cool. Like I had set up a little social media account for her. And it's, you know, like
just that community vibe.
Like they were generally, you know, upset, or not upset, but sad by us leaving.
No, I get that.
And it's like,
was part of that from you being an American being there, do you think? Because like when we were in Shanghai, it was fascinating, like the attention that our group would get. And one of my buddies, blonde hair, like you would have thought he was a Greek, you know, god walking down the street, just like spy cam, you know, you're taking pictures with just random families. And I think a lot of it was just because we were American.
I mean, because there's like so many people from different places there. So like I could be at the dog park and there's people from Japan, you know, obviously people from Hong Kong, people from, there'd be like the helpers that would take the dogs out. So people from Indonesia, the Philippines, things of that nature.
Okay.
So it's like,
you've got a bunch of transient people there to like either live a new life, meet people, like.
Yeah, I think it's just the culture itself, and you know, my kind of whole perspective on it, or my goal was to represent or remove the stereotype of what people typically think of Americans as being, and you know, like be like a good person, which and like just or be myself, like
these damn Americans, like, I'm gonna go be.
You know, nice. So it's like I would always like go out of my way to say hello. And then one of the things I noticed is like, because it's so fast paced, a lot of times the people that work in buildings, as the residents would leave, they wouldn't even acknowledge the people that work there.
Oh.
So I go out of my way to be like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Neho, which is like hello. The one guy like didn't speak any English and he would say it. And I was like, I started watching like YouTube videos to make sure I would say it right, and like either he was laughing at me,
or he just loved you, like,
like
exactly.
Either way, like I'm making his day every time I said it to him. So I was like kind of in the mindset of how can I leave a positive impact here.
Oh, that's awesome.
And with the Chinese Lunar New Year coming up, tomorrow's day one. Well, I guess it's taking place right now. If you're oh, that's right. If you're over there right now, it's actually
if you're in the future.
It's actually started. But one of the things is like you hand out these red envelopes and you put money into it. Oh, okay. So it's like people within like buildings. So like I would go out of my way to make sure that I got or was able to give every single person in that building. You know, I can't remember. It might have been like equivalent to 10 US
whatever
or something like And it's just like, you know, kind of saying like going, like walking around, like trying to keep track. And, you know, just trying to like make a positive difference in other individuals. But so like I said, like when we left, like people were giving us gifts like that worked in our building. Like they don't make anything.
No, for sure.
They were giving us gifts, so people like gave my dog like some like snacks, gifts.
Like we like the dog a lot. Like you
there's one woman that worked in the building, and she was there whenever the people came to transport my dog, because my dog left out like beforehand, like a month or so before us. But like she was there and was like crying whenever they put my dog, and my dog like drove off. Like she was like,
what?
Yeah, wow. Because my dog is a
you gotta give the Dixie rundown.
I mean, she goes up to everyone. Like she knows no enemies. So like she'd go around the desk and like, you know,
see
like
what's going on.
And they'd be like, oh, Dixie, and like pet her and things of that nature. So it's like my favorite picture that I have of Dixie, like is like in a picture frame. When we first like moved to Hong Kong, like in the temporary place that we were living at. Which was the Rosewood Hotel, their residence. I don't know if you know anything, but this is like, it felt like the Jeffersons moving on up because it's the nicest place ever. You know, it's like, it's top of line hotels. But so they had given us a picture with picture frame of a picture that I like gave them of Dixie. So like I made sure like I gave that to her and told her like, I want you to have like this.
That's cool.
There's like one other guy that he wasn't working the day. So we ended up going to Kowloon and staying in a hotel for like a week because all our stuff got packed up and moved.
Oh, the process of getting out.
So I wanted to make sure that I said bye to him. So like I went like all the way back, and like you know, he's like, it was tearing up and like sad, like asking like, are you gonna come back and like visit? And you know, like we got a picture taken together. And nice, it was like so it's like,
do you think you'd ever go back?
Man, I'd move there like in a heartbeat, really? Man. Yeah. So it's just like the vibe, the energy there. Like there's everything's at your fingertips, super safe. So, you know, people want to like talk about, you know, having the government too involved because they have CCTV, they have like
exactly
like laws in place and, you know, various things. And it's like the trade-off, as long as you're like minding your business and doing what you're supposed to be and being a good person, like you don't have to worry about any of that. Like you can go out if you want to act a fool and not like cause like too much damage, but you know, if like you want to pass out on the street all night long, like they don't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
As long as you're not like trying to like,
Yeah.
you know, take out the government, then everything is cool. And it's like,
and Hong Kong's kind of like its own little thing within this bigger ocean, you know? Like,
yeah. I mean, even like mainland China, it's the same way. It's like, I mean, you have experience there, but like I had friends from mainland
Shanghai felt just like New York City while I was there. Now,
safe.
you get a lot of grace being an American, I think. Or we did, it felt like you could kind of, they wanted you to be there. They were very like supportive. Now going to Beijing was where it kind of felt like the vibe switched for me going to Beijing. And like, you know, you walk through Tiananmen Square and you're like, oh, this feels a little bit different.
Yeah. But there's also like a backstory to it.
There is. There's like this place has a different, you know, like places can hold that feeling or emotion.
But there's not like the necessarily where you're fearful of like a crime taking place against you, you know? It's like,
not necessarily, yeah.
And like, because there's the CCTV that's available. So like if you commit a crime, like you're probably going to get arrested.
Yeah.
Like I could.
Well, looking at what's going on in New York right now compared to my experience in Shanghai, I'm like, Shanghai's looking pretty great. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the thing is like, would you rather have all these freedoms where you can like say whatever you want and just be like super negative with your like viewpoints and, you know, want to like talk about carrying a gun, or would you rather, you have to worry about all these other things where you don't have the government involved in our, you know, our day-to-day life? Or would you rather live someplace where the government's more involved, but everything's safe? And as long as you like, don't say F mainland China, you know, you can live your best life.
I see what you're saying, but man, I kind of like the idea of a Second Amendment right.
I mean, like, you could talk amongst your friends, you know. You just got to understand like the guidelines of some things, like feeling safe on a daily basis, knowing I can go out at 1 a.m. or come back like and don't have to worry about getting stabbed or robbed was always a nice sort of situation. So nowadays it's like being back in the States.
There's the Wild West, Wild East.
I mean, there's all these, you know, like you see these crimes. It's like they were driving a, you know, blue Honda Civic license plate, this number. And it's like, you got the license plate. Like, you can't figure out where these people are. Like, is there not enough like cameras out to like track these sort of situations? So, yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, I wouldn't move to mainland China just because they got like super strict on the whole lockdown on dogs. Couldn't like, I'd move back to Hong Kong.
The dogs is where we draw the line.
Well, yeah, the whole reason of moving back was it wasn't the restrictions or the things of that nature. It was January 2022, a pet store employee in Causeway Bay had tested positive for COVID. Government goes in there, they start surface swiping all that pets or animals that they have in there, and these hamsters that had been brought in from the Netherlands surface swipe for like positive for COVID. So then it goes into anyone that bought a hamster from there needed to bring their hamster in to be cold, you know, put down.
Yeah.
So then these animal rights activists would sit out there and be like, hey, we'll take your hamster if you don't do that. Or, you know, some people didn't take their hamsters in. National security law like came into place, and it was like, all right, if the government requires you to turn over your pet and you don't, that's a national security violation. So then your pet's going to get taken and you're, you know, whatever's going to take place. I'm like, I'm out.
Sorry, y'all.
If that had never taken place, like, still be sitting in Hong Kong, living the best life. But yeah, that was it.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
My dog's my ride or die. Like,
that's actually kind of wild, though, going off of the hamsters. Who knew such a tiny creature could cause such chaos?
Yeah. So,
were you training when you were in Hong Kong? Were you doing anything like that?
Training.
Weren't you doing like you were doing?
Wrestling
or jiu-jitsu?
I was teaching or coaching wrestling at Otto's jiu-jitsu gym.
Oh, nice.
There for a little bit, and then like doing jiu-jitsu as well. And then like COVID like caused all these gyms to be like shut down.
Yeah.
So like a lot of people just bounce.
Really?
There's like, and like the gym's back to where it has a large group of people, but the professor would have to like, was still competing, so he'd leave and then have to be like in quarantine.
Oh,
because he had like he's from Brazil, yeah. And then there's like some like champion like people training there that just like moved on and like,
okay, this isn't gonna work.
But yeah, so I was doing that. I developed a academic performance program for the Princeton Review there. COVID hit and you couldn't like, you know, so that kind of hindered that. And then I was supposed to start Dr. Lee Jones, who was the manager for the Hong Kong like rugby professional performance team there. So he actually had his doctorate in sports psychology. So I was here to like come in and like, you know, kind of learn from him, learn about rugby, like help out with them. And then like a couple months after like we started like getting into it, they dropped it. He left and went back to the UK.
Dang.
So yeah, a lot of what it ended up doing was just doing the mental performance stuff like online with you know, via Zoom. So
as much as you can.
So that's kind of the gist of that. But yeah, man, like Hong Kong was cool.
How'd you get into the mental performance stuff?
Just being an athlete, a coach, sort of situation. I think a lot of it became because a lot of what we're told in every aspect is a very archaic mindset and things.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think as you start getting in and you start questioning things and start understanding that things that was talked about 10 years ago, even 20 years ago, you know, you got to evolve from that. So if you're still doing the same thing, even though it worked 10 years ago, you know, let's look at Phil Jackson and the triangle like offense with that dominated for the Bulls and see how when he tried to keep doing that, didn't really work. You have to adapt and change and things of that nature. So just kind of looking back at my athletic career, you know, I finally realized, because, you know, wrestling, you know, you always like wrestlers, like we're mentally tough, like da 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 da. And, you know, like you have that mentality, and especially being a male, like, you know, the sports psychology type situation. And when I was coaching at UNCG, I was also competing. One of my friends, like that I ended up meeting there, so she was working on her doctorate in sports psychology. But I was kind of like in that, you know, I'm mentally tough. Like I don't need this.
Oh yeah.
And I was wrestling at US Nationals, and like I super underperformed. Like, and I distinctly remember prior to my match where I was like, oh yeah, like I'm going to like show everybody, like, and just completely like wasn't even focused and like didn't wrestle to like everyone's kind of like, what's going on?
What just happened?
Yeah, I started like
kind of totally different person, like didn't even do what your normal level would have been.
Yeah, and like it wasn't necessarily at that time where I understood that. I eventually like would ask her for like little like things like, hey, like, you know, and it'd be the simple thing is just like a phrase like cue up like, all right, I'm prepared for this, like I got this type situation. This is like going to an interview for like other sort of things.
Yeah.
But you know, like even like when I coached you in high school, I wasn't fully aware or like in that space, you know, still kind of, I was ahead or on a much higher level than most high school coaches as far as understanding of physical performance and the things that I did, even more like ahead of, you know, like stuff that people are like now getting into.
Well, it's funny you say that, because even when I was thinking about this, I was like, you're the first person that I remember talking to me about, like, you remember that book, The Dolce Diet?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're the first person I ever remember talking to me about, like, what are you eating actually? Like, not just like how much like weight, like how much did I eat, but like what was it? And like I think feel like we had a conversation about like green tea one time or something. And
oh yeah.
You would just tell me stuff and I'd be like, wait, what is he talking about? But then it would like, so it planted seeds.
Yeah.
In a situation where like I never had a male person in my life who had actually been like, okay, it's not just like, or like lift it up. It's like, what is happening and what are you doing? And I just remember that being like, I don't think at the moment I valued it as much as I do now, which is interesting, but it still was like, oh, maybe I need to shift a little bit.
Well, even like going back to that, if you think about, if you recall how I would structure like the weekly like training.
Yeah.
It wasn't you guys went out there and, you know, we go over something like live wrestle for 30 minutes or, you know, something like that. It was working energy systems.
Okay.
So you start hearing more about energy systems in present day, but this was,
dude,
you know, 24,
13.
Okay.
12 or 13, right? 12 and 13.
Yeah.
You
would know better than me. But yeah, so like I have a periodization plan.
High school?
Yeah. And it, like each training was based off of working a different energy system. So one energy system could recover. And that way, and if you like recall, like you guys are probably in better shape than everyone else.
That's what that was like the first time us as a team ever like would get complimented.
Yeah. So it's kind of like there's that, and like I wouldn't have learned that, but when I was coaching at UNCG, like the head coach Jason Lukitas, who was the head coach for the all-Marine team before the Marines decided to drop it after they had their first Olympic qualifier. But like he's probably one of the greatest minds in wrestling, but he doesn't have like that big name recognition. But like I learned so much from him, and like we would just like geek out just talking about it. But it's always like the performance thing. So you know, kind of understanding those sorts of situations. And, you know, obviously nutrition plays in a way.
For sure.
But at some point, I started like, so Dr. Coit Cooper, he used to teach in the sports management at UNC Chapel Hill. So he wrestled at Indiana, was All-American there. And like he wrote some books, and essentially like self-help books sort of situation. So I started like working with him a little bit. And that's where I started getting into, you know, just like the differences of, you know, mindset sort of situation. Yeah. And then just be me, myself, I kind of started thinking back to my struggles. Yeah. You know, even like high school, like I was like #1 ranked kid in my weight class and just like shit the bed at the state tournament. Yeah. And then like going back to mentioning when I wrestled at US Nationals, I'm like, oh, what happened? You know, like I put all this effort into understanding the performance side of things, nutrition side of things, but then, you know, it's like the mental side of things. So that's when I like ended up like getting into that. I'm getting my master's in sport and human performance psychology, because it's like, you know, this is like the big difference maker. So that's going to be like, you can do all these other sort of things, but most people are going to underperform because, you know, what's between their ears is like, you know, they're either
get in your head. I mean, we talk about that with everything. It doesn't matter if it's business, if it's sports. I mean, whatever it is, you get too in your head about it. It's like you're crippling yourself basically.
Yeah, and I don't know necessarily like I set out to like, you know, wanting to actually work with individuals, or more just because I wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
Because like
if you inherently were just so into it, it felt like, or from what we've talked about, it seemed like you just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, because you start learning how there's a psychophysiological connection. So once you kind of understand that, and it's not just like a mental thing, but, you know, connecting the two together, which a lot of people might not do. I think that's kind of the big difference. And then kind of learning about it. So, you know, as we were kind of talking about earlier, you need to self-experiment with the various sort of situations first off, and kind of get a better understanding, or even just like listen to other individuals. So when I started working with like clients just on the mental aspect, I think back like, man, I was a freaking idiot. Like, like you read textbooks.
Yeah.
And like, it tells you like this, and this.
Yeah.
Or like you see people out there, like, as I mentioned before, where it's like a system where it's like, and it's not that way.
Oh, yeah. What we were talking about before the podcast.
Yeah.
Like, people want to put you into this playbook when really there's more discovery because we're all our own unique person.
Yeah. And it's kind of the best way that I describe it is that, like the person. So if I was working with you, you're the pilot of the plane. I'm just like the stewardess, the flight attendant, here to help, or, you're fully in charge. But then it's also like, to kind of take in a more humanistic approach and like, what do you need as an individual? So that's why that's kind of my beef, not necessarily my beef, but like why I don't think I'd ever do like, oh, this is a system. This is, the program.
5 steps to, maximize your.
Yeah. Cause like if you aren't interested in any of those things, or maybe there's one thing, then it's just like trying to throw a bunch of things, at the wall. Like, so for me, like I need to listen to you. I need to like see you like in the field. So if you're like an athlete, or if you're like sales presentation, like I need to be able to like see you, because there's like various aspects that might be hindering you. So say for an athlete, breathing mechanics. So there's a connection with your breathing mechanics, obviously oxygen into the brain. If your breathing mechanics suck, you're not getting adequate oxygen, you're not your body's not utilizing it. Your cognitive functions are suck too, right?
Right. Whenever you talk about breathing, I just start thinking about my breath. I'm taking deeper. I'm like, he's talking about breathing,
and that's not the right type of breathing either. We don't want to vertically breathe. We want to breathe horizontally. But we can delve into that a little bit as well. But yeah, it's like, just little things. So if you could see someone in person and just see how are they tense.
Yeah. Okay.
So like you want someone to be in a relaxed state, or, a lot of times when we're concentrating, like we hold our breath.
Yeah.
We're like,
I swear I do that.
No, everybody does it, but most people aren't aware of it because no one like tells them, or, they're not mindful, or they don't practice they don't learn how to really connect with themselves being in the moment. So they're not really mindful of it. But yeah, you become tense and then you start getting irritated.
That's right.
And things of that nature. So really like the only like main thing I would tell people definitely is when you're doing like mental performance, like, man, learning how to breathe properly or being mindful is like the first thing everyone should do. Especially if you're an athlete. Because if your breathing mechanics suck, if your ribs aren't flexing or moving in and out with your diaphragm, that's where you start getting like rib injuries and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in like present day society, because we sit in desk all day.
Oh yeah.
As you sit there with your back up against the desk, those muscles eventually become tight. Your ribs aren't flexing out. And that leads to a lot of back problems. So if you can correct that,
standing, like even just standing, maybe like.
Well, if you start early on, so if you looked at like a little kid, and the way that they breathe, their belly comes out, you see like their rib cage in a 360 moving in and out.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we start looking at after they've been stuck in a desk for 7-8 hours a day for a majority of their life, and they start getting older. It's not that way.
It's just the front, like you just front, like.
And even not that, you start seeing a lot of vertical where the shoulders start rising.
Wow.
So your diaphragm's not fully expanding. And I started diving a little more into this, doing jiu-jitsu, because even like when I was in high school, like I had like some rib injuries.
Okay.
And so as I started diving more into this recently, because like reoccurring rib injuries, here I am at 42 years old. I'm like, man, let me start like, because I've been doing breath work and various sort of things as far as that goes, and it's like, oh yeah, so you need to focus on learning how to expand all the way around. And when you first like start doing that, man, you're gonna be like sore in the backside.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but as long as you start doing it on a regular basis. So
yeah.
I do a diaphragmic warm up before I go do jiu-jitsu or when I wake up in the morning time, because it's a muscle.
Yeah. Well, what is that? What is the warm up? How does you do it?
So I just take a deep inhale.
Okay.
I'll pause, take a little more in.
Little sip. Yeah.
And then it's kind of the same thing as I exhale, breathe all the way out, pause a little more. I'll run through like 15 or 20, just like that. Just to.
And are you trying to like push your back out?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So essentially you're trying to warm up those muscles in that area.
Oh.
So you're not going out there. I mean, think about you going out there cold and
we
do all this other stuff to warm up everything else. And we're like missing this.
Yeah, the critical breathing apparatus.
So like I've noticed, I haven't had any issues with my ribs since I started doing that. Also, when I do jiu-jitsu, like I don't do any conditioning. I just now started lifting weights again this week after like months of not doing anything. But I do jiu-jitsu a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like the only person that never gets tired.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
I know these other people that go work out and things of that nature. But it's because my breathing mechanics are functioning how they're intended to work. So, I mean, so breathing mechanics is important. Also, like your feet, too. So if we're just like kind of referencing that as well. I think this Foot Collective has like some stuff, but like
you talking about like shoes, like what you're wearing on your feet,
or just like strengthening them. You know, like
I got the barefoot shoes.
Okay, yeah,
the Vivo ones that the toe box is supposed to be bigger in.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but like it's supposed to help your feet spread out.
Well, you can get like the little toe spacers as well.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to have this splay, and then there's exercises to help strengthen like the arch of your feet and things of that nature. But if you work in those two areas, obviously like jumping from the mental side now into more structural side, but you're be like in a healthier situation as far as your body is. Yeah. Because a lot of times,
they're always showing in the Vivo stuff like the like a baby's foot, and then they'll show like an adult's foot who's not doing that, and then like one who has worn the barefoot shoes. And you're right, they like have this weird spread to them, and your foot kind of has this like, but then as we wear like the tight shoes, your toes all get jammed in together.
Yeah, and it's also just jumping up to the breathing side of things. It's also like we're not supposed to breathe in and out of our mouth.
Okay, yeah.
It's supposed to be, our nose is intended for that.
Do you do any of the mouth tape stuff?
Yeah, and like
you do.
We were talking about the heart rate variability stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Earlier, like every morning I do it, and sometimes like, just depending on what I'm doing, like you're not supposed to like mouth tape if you like have consumed alcohol. So, or sometimes like if I forget like tape or whatnot, my HRV I can tell a difference. So when I'm mouth tape, I'm usually wake up in the ideal state. So in between that parasympathetic and sympathetic kind of state. Yeah. But I do that, and it's noticeably different. And like if you like just without really diving into the purpose of it, but like there's all these like I'm trying to think of where the group was. I think it's like a group in Africa, like like a native tribe. Okay. And like they go out and they hunt, and they never get tired, and they're like chasing the animals. Eventually the animals like get tired. Okay. And like the animals can't run anymore, and they just like, but they're like nasal breathing the entire time. Oh, interesting. Or the distance runners and that native group in Mexico, I can't remember, they run like with a like the essentially barefoot sandals like type deal. Yeah. Like nasal breathing the entire time.
Interesting.
So like never breathing through your mouth.
Kind of how they, I guess, have evolved, is just constantly breathing through their nose.
Yeah. So you end up utilizing the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, in a better way, opposed to just like breathing out through our mouth.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that for like calming yourself down too, like being able to get out of like even what you were talking about, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. I feel like that nasal breathing can help you get focused.
That's kind of tying back in, where I am as far as the mental side of things and the performance. So just understanding, you're in control, right? So like the whole ice bath thing, I think that's kind of fizzled out. Most people, I don't even think, had a real understanding of why they were doing it besides posting a picture to the gram and just like, oh, look at me. And it's like,
talk about a trend. Holy moly.
Yeah, it's like there's still people that if you're trying to like build muscle or whatnot, you shouldn't be ice bath because it's, you want that.
Especially right after you work out, right?
Yeah, you want that inflammation, like you're breaking it down. But from a mental performance side, the benefit is it teaches you how to be in control, how to control your breath.
Yeah.
So, the only thing that we can control as individuals is ourselves. So no matter what takes place around us, we can't control that. But we can control ourselves. And by being mindful of how we feel in that certain state when it takes place, our breath can take us there. And that's why that's probably the most important tool that everyone should utilize. As far as from the performance side of things or the mental performance side of things. But you go in that ice bath and, what's the first thing that happens? You go,
your brain's screaming at you, get out. Like,
yeah. Because you're jumping in that kind of sympathetic, that fight or flight type vibe.
For sure.
And it's like, wait a minute. If I can control my breathing, slow, long exhale and just like focus on that. And it does kind of two things. Because once you're in, and what I like about breath work is it's a form of meditation. We'll just call it mindfulness opposed to like Eastern sort of meditation. But as I'm sitting there focusing on my breath, that's all I'm worried about. I'm worried about being present in the moment right now. And if you are taking advantage of that and learning that, hey, when shit hits the fan and I get over aroused, just by breathing, I can get back to a state where now I can refocus and better understand what I need to do. So like, you go through that. I don't know if like how many people took that or, like I said, if it was just a cool thing to do, literally.
My thing with the ice bath, I mean, like, okay, cool. But like, if you want to do cold therapy, why not just like take a cold shower, go outside? Like, don't you get the same
like you're not gonna
stimulant? Like,
because it doesn't get cold enough unless you're like take a cold shower and it's like wintertime, then you go outside. I think that's the advantage. There was a little spike, I think, in breath work in regards to that. But like, I don't know. I think it's still kind of a trend. But like I said, like as I've delved a little deeper into it and understanding how the breath works, and then like I learned like, the importance of this full 360 horizontal breathing.
That's fascinating. Vertical, how we get trained to go vertical versus like going out.
So you remember like being a student and like a teacher would be like before a test, take a deep breath in. And it always be like, the inhale is like, well, what ends up happening? So a long, hard inhale is sympathetic driven. So, it's like, if you're trying to like get amped up, like it's in the inhale. When you're trying to calm down, you want that long, slow exhale. So essentially teachers are like setting you up for failure before a test. And you're like, and like, so and that's kind of the fun. Like you just think about like these little things. It's like, man,
how misaligned, like just some of these like habits or quote unquote best practices.
I mean, it's just like the very archaic things like that
that's
are
a good word for it.
Everyone keeps saying, like coming from, the sports world, talking about archaic things and understanding like mental performance. And like I mentioned, like it's not all just goal setting or some of this other stuff, but it's having an understanding of you know, who you are first.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can do whatever you want, like training wise on the mental performance side, but if you don't have an understanding of who you are and what you need, it's going to be pointless. So you need to understand who you are first,
for sure,
and what you kind of need.
Well, I like that a lot, and we were talking about this before the podcast too, of just some of this new wave medicine seems to be really focused on understanding, like, what are your hormones as an individual, like how are you different than everyone else, and actually prescribing some sort of like supplementation for who you are, or being very conscious of just how your physiology is compared to most people, like, and it seems like that would apply to mental, physical, like all the things.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this day and age, and everyone's looking for that external help, whether it's supplements or this and that.
Yeah.
But the human body was designed to do all the work for us, to like regulate things, to detox ourselves, to fight off sicknesses, things of that nature. And you need to focus on that first, doing the little things. Like I said, like we talked about, like nutrition, learning how, like the mental performance things, just connecting that to breathing, how we're supposed to properly breathe, how our body's supposed to properly move first. Like obviously there's other genetic issues that might come into play, or other sort of situations. And then but once you get, like the building blocks of everything, like on point, you're doing what helping your body function the way that needs to be.
Yeah.
And then if you need like external stuff, but yeah, I mean, let's
start at the base of it before you're going to go external.
Yeah. I mean, we look at like supplementation,
it's hot. It's always been hot though. It's been hot forever. It just changes its, form.
Yeah. It's like, why don't you just eat a good healthy diet? Like once you like go out and like eat healthy, or hire, and I think we
want it to be easy. I take this thing and I feel better, or I do this.
But then you start getting the placebo effect. Yeah. So it's like we're spending all this money in our heads. We're like, yeah, like I feel great. But it's like,
is it actually? Yeah.
And there was a study, I can't remember the specific result, but essentially people that were on the placebo that thought they were on something, and people that were on the medication, I think it was like only like 10% off as far as like.
Oh, I'd wonder what it was for. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, you get the same health benefits. Because that's how like powerful the human mind is.
Oh yeah,
and connecting the psychophysiological connection there.
You see someone like Wim Hof who's like doing everything with breath, and like is he tapped into something that we're all missing out on here? Like,
yeah, I mean, like if you are doing everything and if your body's properly functioning, then it can have just the same result as taking this like medication essentially. And that's, I can't remember the study off the top of my head. It's been a minute since I looked at it.
Yeah.
But essentially, the placebo group and the medication group, pretty close as far as a result, just from your body's or your mental abilities could connect to the body, and then your body like kicking into gear and doing what it's supposed to naturally do.
Yeah.
Type situation. So yeah, I mean, if we actually put forth an effort to focus on ourselves first, mentally, socially, physically, nutritionally, and get everything functioning proper, then it's like a lot of this stuff you wouldn't need.
What do you feel like has been like the biggest like needle mover for your just day-to-day like well-being?
Just being mindful.
Yeah.
Being in the moment. And that's the big difference, especially.
That's fascinating. Like that's such an to me that's such an interesting answer. Like just being more conscious, almost like.
Well, so this is kind of like the big difference maker. So Dr. Seligman, who was he's considered the founder of positive psychology. So, I was like got into a lot of that sort of stuff, and just we have to be realistic with things. So we can't just be like, oh, this world is all rainbows and unicorns type situation. You know, there's shit out there. Like, we got to realize that. Yeah. But the more positive we are with things and how we can like control the way we think is going to impact our day to day. So just say, for instance, you know, you're driving down the road, you're going home, someone cuts you off, and then you're like, oh, F you, da, da, da. Like, you get back home for the next 4 hours, you're like, like, and you're just like pissed off the rest of the time. Why?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Like, I feel the same way about that with like athletic teams. Like, I've always been such a bad sports fan, but I think it's because like I see how emotional people get about it. I'm like, you couldn't like. No,
you're not out there,
You're not out there, bro. Like, I don't know what to tell you. In this, like, you're in a stadium and there's a dude who's just like cussing the ref, or he's just like, you know, not crying, but just like obviously having a horrible day. And I'm like, bro, like, you're very disconnected. The louder you yell, they can't. I'm telling you, they can't hear you, my man.
Yeah. So it's like, people are like too worried about things that aren't in their control. Mm-hmm. But essentially, like, I started like paying more attention, and like, you actually have to try to like pay attention.
Yeah.
So, you know, at first it would be like, I would kind of just like journal down, you know, what took place that day. And then eventually it's like, you start recognizing it, where you had to take these breaks throughout the day. And it's like, you know, like, man, what just happened? Why am I mad about that?
Yeah.
And I think the real most impactful thing is when you start taking in consideration perspectives. Because there was I think he was a clinical psychologist in like Baltimore or something that I read about, one of these positive psychology books. But understanding perspectives can have a big impact and rationalizing things.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was someone, I think, broke into his home and like murdered his family, things of that nature.
Oh, jeez.
And like, he forgave the person that did that because he was looking at the other perspective of like, why did this person do that? Why did he break in and rob? What was the situation?
Yeah.
And rationalizing those sorts of situations.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, it's an intense thing, but it's like, if you dwell on the negative for so long.
Yeah.
And that's just an extreme case. Think about people dwelling on like,
oh no, you're right. Yeah, there's exactly
dumb stuff.
My Starbucks order was wrong, and I'm gonna have the worst day ever because I got 2 pumps instead of 3 pumps.
Yeah, I mean, so like, if you just like try to think about, you know, you get cut off, rationalize why did they cut you off? Why are they speeding? Like, well, maybe they have rushed into the hospital, or maybe, you know, you know, it's gone and passed.
You never know.
Like, instead of just being all mad about like something you can't control.
Yeah.
So being mindful, you know, the most important time of the day is when?
Most important time of the day?
Yeah.
The morning.
No, right now. Most important time of the day is right now, being in the moment. That's going to be the most important time. If we're worried about what's going to take place, you know, later in the day, we're not focused on right now.
Yeah.
If we're worried about what's happened already, well, we're not going to be, you know, at our best right now.
Yeah.
Most important part of the day is right now. You know, being in the moment. That's being mindful. And it's like, we live in a world. We live in a world where there's so much information getting thrown at us. Like, you know, nonstop. We look at the phone, like you're out and about.
And how much of that is negative?
That, and it's just like, sometimes we just need to take a break. And it's like, the easiest thing is like, if you were just to go outside, you know, relax. And there's like more that you could do, but let's just say you're just starting out. You step outside, close your eyes, cycle through, you know, you're breathing a little bit, open it up, and just like start noticing, look around. And start appreciating everything around you, like, you know, like the trees, the birds.
For sure.
And like, you're focusing on things that we often overlook. And it's like, creates this like little, you know, little positivity in your daytime. Or even just like, you know, we were talking about a lot of times that when we're doing tasks and we're not breathing.
Yeah.
Like if you just say, hey, every time I walk through a doorway, I'm going to just take a second, just kind of like, do I feel tense? Let me just breathe, relax. Like,
I like that. Yeah.
So it's just like little steps. Being mindful is probably the difference maker. Because say if you're an athlete or if you're going for a presentation and say if something's going on in your home life and then you go into that presentation like thinking about that, how well is that presentation going to go?
Exactly. You're thrown off already going in.
Yeah. So it's already there.
Yeah.
You can come back to that whenever, you're finished.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
But it's about having that understanding of like, why am I worried about that right now? And like there'd be like times like, have you ever like just woken up in the middle of the night like worried about something?
In the morning it'll hit me. In the morning it'll wake up and I'm like, damn, I got to do that, that, and that. And it's like I've got to get those 3 things done. Or it'll happen to me right as I'm going to sleep. I don't think I've ever woken up from it, but it definitely hits
even
me.
Like right going to sleep, it's like, if you just like tell yourself, why am I worried about this right now?
That happened to me last night. I was going to sleep. I was like, damn, I got to send that person that thing, and I got to make sure that gets done. And I had to get my phone out and put it into my phone as a reminder so I would know to do it when I woke up in the morning. But that helped get it out of my head. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like things like that, it's like, when you're sleeping and about to go to bed, and it's like, it's still going to be there in the morning. You can deal with it then. Yeah. Why am I worried about it right now?
I'll marinate on it if I don't get it out, though.
But it's all about just changing the way that you think about things. Like, even if you like just make that note, that's like all right, like, boom, here, this is good. Yeah. But like, just to dwell on something for, it's like, why am I worried about this? Yeah. Like, or even like in
that's comments on Jeb's World's YouTube videos.
Yeah, it's like when I'm working with an athlete and it's like, say competition wise, whatever the time period is, people like to look at the end result before it's there. So people look up at the scoreboard. Well, if you have, say, like 20 minutes left and you're down by 2 points, why are you worried about the end? Yeah. Like if you're worried about right now, the greater chances are that you can get back. Yep. So, I mean, it's one score at a time.
For sure.
Opposed to like...
You were big on that when we were wrestling. Don't look at the scoreboard.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Like,
yeah, well, I remember that being a big thing. You're like, don't look at the scoreboard. And I'm like, I don't want to go look at the scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, like, you go out there and do what you're supposed to do.
You go do what you're supposed to
do.
And
that's the thing is like, the greatest thing to learn is failure. So, because failure like provides feedback. Yeah. So we always get negative and positive feedback. Positive feedback's like what went well. Yeah. Okay, how can I like utilize this on a more regular basis or incorporate this? Negative feedback's like, what did I do that didn't go well? Yeah. All right, how can I remove this sort of situation? Yeah. But failure's like and that's kind of what's wrong with like education system is because you can't fail. Like the lowest grade a kid can get is like a 60 or something like that. Like there's no way to fail anymore. But failure like allows someone, the ability to learn. So say for instance, like,
especially in athletics where it can be so intense, it's like you got to get comfortable with that early on. Otherwise, it's going to be.
But yeah, people like don't teach people how to fail.
No, not at all. Yeah.
And that's like the most important life lesson. It's like, failing's okay. Because like sometimes you see athletes go out to compete and they're worried about not losing. If you're worried about not losing, your focus isn't on what you need to be doing right then and there.
No,
so if that's all your focus, you'll be like holding back. Yep. Because you'll be scared of like, oh, if I do this, that could cause me to like lose. So you're never going to perform at your best. Yeah. So I kind of frame it like this, like, are you going out there, not to lose, or you're going out there to, get better, to learn and get better? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's like there's always a competition. Or, business world. If you go into a meeting and you're like concerned about like, oh, what if I get rejected? And like in my daytime job in sales, like, all right, I know I'm gonna hit on some stuff, and some stuff's not gonna like happen. Like, all right, move on. Because like, if I go in one place and they say no to me, all right, cool. Like, we'll get something later on.
Yeah.
So it's all about, you know, kind of like framing that and like having an understanding that
kind of bouncing off of it. Let it be what it is.
Did something go wrong there?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of sort of feedback can I get to better myself and improve myself for the next time?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about just like learning.
That's really strong. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you always gotta, everyone needs to be a student. Like I said, first off, you gotta learn about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about the mindfulness kind of aspect and incorporating breathing, because breathing's kind of the easiest way. Because as you sit there and you're like focusing on breathing, you're focusing on that, and you're being in the moment at that point in time, then you can kind of build off of that in other sort of situations that individuals need. But yeah, it's if people just kind of learn that, you know, control what you can control.
Yeah.
You know. And so we kind of talked about like goal setting earlier, and why it's a bunch of BS to start there, and people like overly like talk about, oh, we got goal setting, or you know, people like, oh, there's 4 quarters in the year, you got. Well, the problem is like most people don't understand about goal setting.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, let's focus on like, you know, the end result of goal right here. And then it's like, now people have expectations. So people go through and they don't get those expectations. So let's just say a lot of people probably started out January 1 and like, oh, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. So, you know, the expectation is that at the end of this month, they're losing 20 pounds, right?
A pound every 2 days, or pound every day and a half.
And that's essentially what they do, or they do what they think that they need to do.
Yeah.
People don't understand it's a journey.
Yeah.
So they say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Day 1, they wake up 5 a.m. going to the gym. They completely change their diet. Problem is, they normally wake up at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to take a toll.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they go in, they immediately like put on like max weight on like bench squat. And the next couple of days, it's like
2 miles on the treadmill, max squat.
They run themselves into the ground.
Yeah.
And what ends up taking place is it's too steep of a gradient. Like you can't jump.
Yeah.
You know, like say for instance, if we went out and we're like, all right, climbing Mount Everest today. Haven't trained. Let's do this. That's what people are doing. Like we gotta go like just out the little hill out back, and like we want to start with like something simple.
I love what you're saying, man. I feel like I tried to do this. Like I think like a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago. I was like, I'm gonna start a fitness journey, and I literally just started walking, and it was just like I didn't even go to the gym anymore. I was like, I just walk now. Because I saw my girlfriend walking, she'd do like 4 miles a day, and I was like, damn, like you kind of got it together. So I just walked, just whenever I could walk, 4 miles a day, or 10,000 steps was my goal, and that's just all I did for a year. And then I started going to like a boutique fitness place, but realized it wasn't really doing what I needed. But it got me to the habit of going somewhere, and just in the last 90 days. I started actually going to the gym now and doing weightlifting again, like consistently, but it's been in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Because I was so out of it. I would go to like, I did CrossFit for 60 days and then I'd be done with it. And then I would like try this other place. And I was like, damn, I can't get locked in with a habit. And I had to just be like, I need to be into fitness for the rest of my life. That's the goal. What happens in the next year to do that?
Well, yeah. So, and another thing is, you know, like you're talking about being in fitness for the rest of your life. Another thing is when people set goals, there's a lot of times it's very generic.
Yeah.
They think this is what I think I need to do.
Yeah.
You know, type situation. Because this is what I'm told I'm supposed to do. Everyone, for the most part, is like, oh, yeah, I need to lose weight come January. I'm going to start working out. Like, that's the most generic response.
Yeah.
but there's nothing connecting. There's no value built into it. Now, say for instance, if you are a parent of a child, say you go out and play with that child and, you know, you start heavy breathing, you can't keep up.
Yeah.
You know that you're not living your best life, and you start, you know, you decide like, hey, I'm going to lose weight because I want to be there for my kid. Like, I want to be able to go play.
Yeah.
Now, if that really meaningful for you, and you're losing weight because of that, and for your child, you know, it's like, you're going to do it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Because now you're like adding, you know, you're connecting something of value to that goal.
Yep.
So once you do that, it's like when you want to quit, or it's not, like you start and like you look at your kid and then you like look at him, you're like, you know, like, do I love them or not? Like, you know,
you're right.
Are they really important? And like, you'll keep doing it, because otherwise you're like, you've already like set yourself up. Like, if I stop doing this, so like connecting some sort of like value to it instead of being the generic response. And it's okay. Like, say for instance, like we talk about high school or college athletes. What's the most generic response? That
they want to be a champion. Or
yeah,
be a state champion. Or a national champion.
Yeah, so that's going to be the most generic response that people give you. And then you ask them, like, what are you going to do to do that?
I'm going to go to the gym a lot.
Or, yeah, I'm going to work hard. It's super generic. Yeah. But most people give a response because that's what they think they're supposed to say. Right? So, like, you go in, any high school kid's like, oh, I want to win a state championship. Do you realize what you need to do that? Like, are you willing to do that?
Yeah.
Or they don't. They think they're going to get persecuted if they just want to be like, oh, I just want to, like,
I'm having fun.
I just want to have fun, or when I'm
cool.
You know, maybe
like
year one.
Guys, like,
yeah. So like,
my boys are here. Like.
Yeah. So yeah, I've worked with like some kids, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to. Well, one kid was like, truth. It's like, you know, I just like want to, like, maybe my senior year, like I want to win a state championship. You know, not now. I just want to get better. Like, yeah, just be honest. All right, now what are you gonna do to get better?
Yep.
Like, how can you get better?
Yep. And
then you start laying that out. But like I said, you know, a lot of times mentioned with goals, and I don't even call it goals. You know, I talk about being like mission minded, or, you know, having a mission on.
I like that. Yeah.
As a focus. So say for instance, you get to the end of January, you didn't lose 20 pounds.
You failed.
You know, people are like, oh, well, that didn't work. Like, I'm going to stop this. I only lost 8 pounds. Yeah. They're like, I look much. I'm down a couple of pant sizes. Like, I've been like working out every day, but that didn't work. Oh. And then people just like quit because they set these expectations up, and they get too hung up on the expectations and not focusing on the journey itself. And the journey is like the most important thing. So when we can look back at things and be like, oh, I was able to work out consistently.
Yeah.
You know, 5 times a week.
For sure. Yeah. That's a dub. Yeah.
I skip breakfast every day, but, you know, before this, but now I'm eating, you know, a healthy breakfast sort of situation, and build upon that.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, that's like the start. You know, we start with a little hill out back, and then eventually move up to a little higher and start building upon it. So as long as like people realize that, you know, things don't happen overnight. Like, it's going to take some time.
Yeah, but that's okay.
You know, so like you see like professional bodybuilders, like they didn't just go to the gym for like 1 month and like, and granted, like some of them have some additional assistance taking place.
They get a little saucy.
Yeah. But that's over like a long period of time.
No, it is. Yeah.
So that's kind of the greater thing is, you know, you can have a long-term goal, but if it doesn't happen automatically, like you can't just automatically, oh, well, none of this worked. Well, what did work? What sort of changes? You notice any differences in your life? Do you feel better? Like, are you, you know, just the little things, like, oh yeah, okay, now I have a little better understanding. Like,
for sure,
what can I keep doing, and like, how can I improve upon this?
Dude, that's awesome, man. We just ripped like an hour and a half. That was awesome. Okay. Yeah, heck yeah. I feel like this is going to have a lot of nuggets for the people. Thanks for coming
hopefully.
on, man.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah. This is fun, dude. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah,
it was
for
fun
sure.
jamming. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all later.
Peace.
Peace.